Okay, hi everyone and welcome back to the next step in our mini-series looking at developing our first humanoid shape. Now in this video what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you kind of one approach to modeling this, starting to model it. I'm not going to do either a speed run video because I don't really think that they're very practical. You just spend all the time pausing it. And you never quite figure out what's going on. And I'm not going to do every single step, right? So there's some areas in here that is just a duplication of the same method. And there are some things I'd like you to kind of experience, figure out on your own. But I'm definitely going to give you at least a solid starting point and hopefully some good kind of justification for why this is the approach that we have. We have here the reference scene file that I've put up on Moodle. You can use that if you like, but I definitely still think that there is some merit in making your own. As an educational process, you kind of learn how to put these in, how to scale them, how to set them up, and those kinds of things that will be important in the future. So what we're going to do to start is we're actually going to go over here and we're going to add a new shape into the scene. And what I'm going to do is, although some of this is a bit boxy, actually generally humans or humanoids are kind of round or a little bit chubby arms, and we have some like cylindrical kind of shapes, and you could imagine this as a whole tube. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make a cylinder, and I'm just going to build that out there. That's probably about all I need. Now, one of the things that we just want to look at is yours might look slightly different to this. It depends on how the parameters are set up on your initial cylinder build. So here, over on the right, you'll be able to see that I have a radius, so if I change this I can kind of change the size of it, and I can change the height of it, and if I go here I can kind of see that this is already kind of a bit chunky, so I'm actually going to just reduce that a little bit. That's probably okay, and because it's the radius, it's unilateral, it's not a one-sided scale, which is nice. And we have segments, so the segments are the divisions between the vertices. The more we add here, we can see that that's kind of getting smoother and smoother, and that's nice. Obviously it's a round object. Most organic objects are quite round, but that is going to add more work for us later. So for now I'm probably going to leave it at about 18. That's kind of what it was, or what it usually is set at. And then we've got cap segments, so we can add some detail on here, but again that's just going to make it more complex for us. And we have height, so here we can see that it kind of adds horizontal cross sections of each vertical line. So we can add in some, but we're actually going to do that manually, so I'm just going to put that down to 0. And we do that before we make it an editable poly. Otherwise that becomes a preset. So and if you click off the shape and you want to continue editing that, you can go up here to modify, and we can kind of do that before we make it editable poly. But that's kind of where I want to start, so I'm going to just right click and convert to editable poly. So now I have the full kind of poly modeling tools available to me. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the whole thing, so the whole element, and I'm going to actually maximize this viewport, and I'm just going to go to move, and you'll notice that when you are moving, we kind of have either the green y-axis highlighted or the red x-axis, or if we go over here, we can have all of them, so we can kind of move this like this, or if we just grab one of them, it will only move like that. So I'll just undo that. I just want to move it up a bit. We're going to start somewhere in the middle. That's probably about right. So let's kind of move this so we can see that it's already kind of a bit too wide. So I'm just going to go up to this one and I'm going to press W to scale. And again, we can see that we can restrict these to just one axis or even just two. So that's probably what I want now. It does the whole shape. So now I can look at that top right viewport and I can see that's kind of a bit too skinny, and that's probably about right. And we can use this top one to make sure that our shape is still cylindrical. Right? So if I did kind of on here, this one, we can see that that shape's getting kind of non-cylindrical. So right, and I'm just going to scale the height a little bit. It's just, there we go. So we'll just go for the main stomach section, and we can see here again that maybe that's actually a little bit too wide. So on here I can press Alt X to activate see-through mode. So we can see the line of the body is kind of there and there. That's not too bad, but maybe we should just, so we're just going to scale that a little bit just on this one. And that's probably okay. So that's a bit closer. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come over to our perspective viewport, and I'm just going to change to polygon select, so we just get this one and this one. So hold Control to do multiple selections, and I'm just going to delete those. So now we have kind of like a tube, right? So this is the outer skin of the character. And then what I'm going to do, which might seem a bit strange, is I'm actually going to take edge select, and I'm going to take all of these. It's probably the best way of doing it. So this whole left half, and I'm just going to delete that. So now we should have roughly half. So that's a little less than half. So I'm just going to Control grab these two, move them so that it's in line with this kind of line. That's probably about halfway. And there we go. Okay, so we now have one half of the torso. So we can see that that kind of aligns quite nicely there and there. And this really is a nice starting point. Make sure to save that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to apply a modifier to this. So if we look here, we can see that generally speaking, the reference image is symmetrical from left to right, on a vertical axis. So there's really no point in us modeling the whole thing, because that's just duplicating work, especially in symmetrical models like this. So we're going to use a modifier to halve our work. So if we select our element that we want to apply the modifier to, and we come over here, so here is our stack. This is where we can, as the name suggests, stack modifiers and editors onto meshes and shapes and things. And this is our modifier drop down list. So if we click on here, we can search through them. And there's lots and lots of different kind of things we can do, and through the series we will cover some of these. And the one we want is symmetry. So basically, and we can see here that that is now applied in a hierarchical fashion on our stack. So we have our editable poly, which is our shape, and we have our symmetry. If we want to see the details of our symmetry, so here we can see kind of this orange mirror square, and we can see the toggles to move it around. We select symmetry, and if we want to see our shape, then it's on and edit that, then we click there. So you can move between the two. Now, this isn't quite the result that we want at the moment, and the reason for that is that the gizmo, or the actual kind of the object that's acting as the position of the reflection, is in the wrong place. So in order to do that, what we do is we come to the symmetry modifier and we click drop down and we click on mirror, and that allows us now to move that around, and we can kind of see how that changes. So as we move that, you know, we can kind of see that it's now reflecting our geometry back on this plane. And if we were to go over here and play with the parameters, we can see if we were to change it, so we can now see that it's facing the other way, and if we were to move that, we can see how that's working, or Z. So again, if we were to move that, we can kind of see how that's done. Now, what we want is we want to be reflecting the left hand side of this, so that's not the right angle. Actually, this is the right angle, because we can see that that is now vertically kind of slicing our reference image. But the problem is that it's not in the right place. Obviously, we kind of want our mirror over here in the middle, because we want to reflect everything that's on this side over onto this side. The problem is that the mirror's gotten a little confused. It's turned around the wrong way, so we just need to go over here and flip it. So that's kind of turning the mirror around, and now we can see that the geometry is being reflected properly, and we can move that. And what we're going to do is we're just going to have that just until it touches, so make sure that there's no gap there, and make sure here that it says weld scene. So what that will do is that will actually, when these vertices get within a certain range of each other, they will connect automatically, and that's what we want. We don't want two halves of a mesh, we want a whole one. So now that very much looks like what we had a minute ago, and it's a lot of work to produce that, maybe unnecessarily at this point, but as we continue to edit this right hand side, that will now be mimicked exactly on the other side. So we've now reduced our workload by half, and to continue doing that, to work on that, what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our stack, and you can leave that open. So this is what it looks like with the modifier on, and when we click here, this is our shape that we are editing. So if we were to take this and just double click here, you can do like a selection of all of these top edges, so that saves you having to hold control and select them all. And if we were to make this much smaller and then go over to symmetry, we can see that that's been replicated. We don't need to update the modifier in any way, so that's good. Just going to set that back again. Okay, so now what we do is we use the same approach that we did when we were making stackable objects in class, and we're going to extrude this line on this mesh, and we're going to kind of start playing around with it, making it align with different areas of the reference image. So at the moment we have this bit, this kind of ends just underneath the rib cage, so that's kind of a nice point, and just above the hip. So we're going to start adding more detail into this. If you want them to eventually be able to bend here, you might want to add some more, but we can do that at the end, so that's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this screen, so this viewport, and I'm going to take this toggle because I want to move this upwards, but what I want to do is produce new connected sides. So I'm going to use the extrude tool to actually do that by holding shift and dragging on the toggle. Okay, so as we hold shift and drag, we create a new extension from our previous connection. So you'll notice that we kind of have this new section that's almost identical to this selection here. So these lines are the same as these lines. And that's basically what we need to do. What we're going to do is we're going to build out this model from this center point. And we're going to follow each time this reference. So here we can see this top bit, we're now moving outwards on the reference image. So if I double click here, what we need to do is mimic that. So if I drag on this toggle, one thing you'll notice is that everything starts to go out of line. So we don't necessarily want to do that, and we end up losing this straight edge, which means that we move away from our center point, okay, and we create this gap. Now, you need to be careful of this, particularly when using a mirror symmetry modifier, because if I'm to click on here, we can see already that we've created a tear in our mesh, and that's absolutely not what we want to do. So I'm just going to undo that move. And the first thing that we want to do is actually press, go to scale, get the scale toggle up, and we're going to isolate this x-axis because at the moment we're only going outwards. We don't want to go up, and we don't want to come forwards. We can't, if we accidentally pull on that, we can't necessarily see it in every angle, so we need to be a bit careful. So make sure here that only this this axis is highlighted. What we're going to do is we're just going to kind of drag that out a bit. Now I know that immediately this is now gone the wrong way. That's okay at the moment, but we've now got a little more width, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the move tool, and we're just going to move that back so that it's in line. So this stays straight, but you'll notice now that this actually follows that quite nicely. Now we need to be a little bit careful again that we're also following the reference image on this side. So this has actually come inwards a bit, so we're going to repeat this process. We're going to go out a bit, and actually for now that's not too bad. Okay, now one of the problems obviously is that that is going to affect how it looks on the other one a little bit. Okay, so what we actually want to do is reset that, and we want to try and just use 2. So these are the 2 ways that we're going to be moving, and actually that looks pretty good. It's a little more on this side, but that's okay for now. See if we can. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to hold shift and drag up another portion. This time I feel like we could probably move up a bit more, so drag that out here. And we're going to take that from the top. We're going to see what happens when we try to make that a bit bigger. And move that over there. Okay. So we've got a little bit of an issue arising here. For some reason the cylinder is kind of acting a little bit funny. Probably because I'm recording a video. So what we could do here is we could actually say, well, this is going to be a curve, right? So we need a little extra detail here than maybe we would have where we have no detail, like on a flat bit. So we're going to add in some extra polys. And one of the ways to do that is make sure that you've got edge selected. So that's the lines, and I'm just going to click and drag straight through all of these. These are the ones that I want to create a horizontal line through. Make sure that they're all highlighted. And I'm going to come over to here, and I'm going to have a look for, wherever it is, the connect tool. So here it is. So the connect tool, when we click on it, creates a new slice. It's kind of like an edge loop or quick slice tool, but it kind of gives us a bit more control. We can going to move it around. And also, if we click on the settings button for it, so I'm just going to undo that one, we can actually decide using this how many slices we want, kind of how far apart they want. So if we want to add a bit more localized detail, we might kind of group them, and then we can move them up and down. So let's kind of put them in a bit about there. And we can also iterate it, right? So we can say, right, I want connections in connections. We probably don't want that, but we want this, okay? Now what I'm going to do is double click on this one and kind of move it around a little bit. Kind of scale that a little bit. Ooh, be careful on this radius. There we go. Need to make sure that that is also evening up on there. What we might do is just end up actually grabbing singular ones of these on the front and just kind of slowly building that out, that shape out a little bit. Yeah, that's looking a little better. Maybe these ones a little bit as well. So make sure that you're in line. We can still use the perspective viewport to see how that's aligning, and we can see here again. We can also use the vertex move if we want and get that really bang on where the edge of the mesh would be. And this really is the process that we use to create most of the body. So if we were to just continue this up, so let's say that that is one, and then I'm going to do this one here. So again, around the neck we're probably going to start adding a bit more detail. I'm not initially going to worry about these. I'm going to add those in to the mesh once it's formed, in the same way that we added these areas here. So I'm just going to get the main topology right, and then from here what I'm going to do is I'm going to maximize this because I need a bit more detail, and I'm going to actually switch to vertex mode, and I'm going to make it see-through. So I want to start moving this whole kind of side area, like probably all of these, left slightly, and in some instances up. I want to keep this side straight, or as straight as I can. I've got a little bit of a wobble in there, so let's just move that back on track. Like that. There we go, somewhere around there, as long as it's about midway. We could always click and make sure, yeah, that's connected, that's fine. So this, I want this to stay here, but this one I probably want more like there. Okay, this one I probably want more like over here. This one we'll do here, and this one can go over here. So it's kind of important to try and keep either quads or tris, whatever you're working in, so it'd be quadrangles or triangles, but sometimes it kind of, obviously the mesh moves around a little bit. We've got this horrific split right here, so we need to just adjust that slightly. We need to bring that in line with this reference point as well. So one of the advantages of moving individual vertices is you're not really affecting the rest of the shape, which is good. However, we've now got this issue where, you know, we've undone our good work. So you need to be really, really careful that actually what you're doing doesn't kind of cock up, you know, the whole thing. And what we could do is we could kind of, you know, look at bringing all of this in together. We could look from the top view. We could kind of think about how we can move these in, so we can see that moving on the top right, and we see that moving. And maybe we would want to actually normalize this a little bit, create kind of like a little circle around here where the neck's going to be. So that's probably going to be in line with there. That's probably going to be in line with there. So you'll notice I'm actually using the free selection. So this is kind of on all axes, but because I'm using a 2D viewport, so this is only limited to one of the or two axes at the moment, and it doesn't get too messy. Hopefully, I just need to make sure again on this one that they are all in line. It's kind of height wise, and this process just, it is time consuming, but unfortunately that's what it takes to create accurate models. That's why we use the images, that's why we do all of this. And we can see again, this is a bit too narrow, so what happens if we drag this out here? We have to be a bit careful with what's happening here. That looks okay. We'll just even these up a little bit. And again here we've kind of gone out of the back and the front kind of pretty massively actually, although that might just be the perspective. There we go. Yeah. So a little bit here. I'm just going to drag these in, and there we go. So you can probably already see why I said earlier that I'm not going to show you the whole model or the whole modeling process, because it really is a lot of the same thing. It's just about learning the techniques that you need to set it up and get going, and to keep checking this symmetry modifier. So when I put it on symmetry, I can see that this point right here is a little troublesome, so we need to just look at that and maybe drag that in a little bit. And there was a break in the seam, so it clearly needs to go that way a little bit, and that kind of fixes that problem for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of now look at how I might add some of the other features. So I'm just going to pause, and I'm just going to quickly kind of throw a neck and a couple of connectors on here. So keep doing this. Look, kind of make sure to use all of the viewports. This obviously is kind of not very ideal. It's not very normalized, so we need to kind of smooth that out a little bit. And kind of come down here. Don't worry too much about what appears to be the kind of pants. So I would maybe, take this section and drag it down. We'll probably need an extra detail there, extra detail there, there, and there. And then at the bottom of the pants, don't worry about the legs at the moment. We're going to sort that out. And obviously go down here and kind of give them some booty on the side view, and the neck again just extrude upwards. So once you've done that, kind of come back to the next video.